The fuel pyramid tower is down a can. Not acceptable. But it's down a can for good reason, because today's video is super exciting. New kit time. So this giant monstrosity that barely fits on my table in front of a camera is none other than the much anticipated Tekno NT48 2.2. That's right. They've gone straight from the 2.0, skipped the 2.1, and went straight to the 2.2 system, branding, whatever you want to call it. Let's take a look.
It's a movie, red carpet, the lights going through me. Anytime I arrive, it's the new me. Real diamonds on my neck, that's groupies. Flashing lights, all these things come to me. Dressed in price, all my rings got weight to it. You feel that? You feel that? Already it's a classic. Classic. If I drop any day, it's a classic. Any wave that I'm on, it's a classic. Hey, you heard that? Classic, classic, classic. If I drop any day, it's a classic. Any move that I make, it's a classic. Hey, you heard that? Classic. Only do classics. I spit fire through the matches. You could call me Mr. Fantastic. I be hitting all the spots like that's it. Hey, that's the motive. Rockin' 23, that's golden. Your girl spinning my vinyl, that thing gold.
Jumping into the breakdown of what is in this build, I have to say thank you, first of all, to why this truck is even here in the first place. Tekno, they sent me the kit. Thank you, thank you, thank you for giving me the opportunity to race and review this truck before it's released. And I'd have to say thank you to Nick over at TZO, who kind of made this connection happen in the first place. He put a nice little birdie in their ear and said, hey, maybe the next time you guys do a kit release, Ryan can help you with like a pre-release content to launch on launch day. Might be kind of cool. So thank you, Nick, for bringing us all together. And then, of course, I have to say thank you to A-Main and the ProTech family of brands. They have outfitted this thing to make it the race-ready truck that you see today, and it is so, so, so nice. They have supplied a fresh RM.1 Samurai ProTech engine. I've been running this engine for basically a year now. You saw me run it in the AE car. It's in my current Tekno Nitro buggy. I ran it in the S-Works buggy. I love, love, love this engine. The power band is exactly what I look for. It's nice and smooth, linear, not too punchy on the bottom. And then we have outfitted it with a 2135 pipe and header system. This is their latest pipe and header. Don't know all the details as to why this is the latest greatest. I know that it has a slightly larger second chamber in the pipe, so it provides a little bit more power, possibly a little bit more fuel efficient. You guys can look at all the details on the A-Main website, but it's in here and it feels, looks, sounds amazing. Now I am running a Kyosho style air filter. I don't know the proper term for this style of air filter. What I do know from the dirt bike side of the world is that Venturi effect is a real thing. And this air boot has a better or more efficient Venturi effect. It lets more air into the carburetor, which results in a short and simple more power. You might have a slightly higher fuel consumption, perhaps, depending on your tune. But overall, this style of air filter is significantly more powerful. I can feel it in my buggy especially. Sometimes I run it, sometimes I don't, depending on the track, but it's definitely a welcomed feature in something like a big heavy truck where you're just looking for more power in general. Can't forget, the ProTech 4-shoe clutch system is attached to this ProTech engine. I've run the Tekno clutches in the past. If you're somebody that likes a little bit higher of an RPM engagement point, takes a little bit more effort to get that clutch to engage. If that suits your driving style, the Tekno clutch is for you, 100%. If you like something that kicks in a little bit lower in the RPM range, has higher just overall engagement with the clutch, the ProTech clutch is definitely for you. I particularly run the 2 composite 2 aluminum setup, exactly how it comes out of the bag. and I absolutely love it. I run it at every track I see down here in Florida, and I have no intention of changing that. Making this truck turn left and right, stop and go, is going to be a beautiful pair of fresh ProTech 170 SBL steering servos. I have run the torque version in the past for the steering, and it's definitely strong enough, no doubt about that, but it seemed to be a little bit slower than the SBL. So I was worried if the SBL could be strong enough to get these big giant truggy tires to turn. And it seems to be doing fine so far. I didn't have any issues at the race day we took it to. I'll get to that footage in a minute. I'm going to keep it in here until I have any issues. I have a TBL on standby in case I need to go to the torque version, but I enjoy the speed. It's very precise, very fast, and it was holding the tires in their correct inputs as best I can tell. Take the body off here and see if I'm missing anything. Now, because of my time crunch that I was surrounded by when they were able to get this truck to me, I was basically headed off to the Chili Bowl. So I had to build it, paint a body, and race it in a very short amount of time. So I didn't get to do this over several race weekends at different tracks and give you guys the normal review that you see because of my racing schedule at the time of this video. But the race day that I did take it to, I raced it exactly how you see out of the box. I don't have any option springs. I don't have any option sway bars, steering plates, nothing. Everything is what you see out of the box. Correction, I have one small change, and it's just because I've become so accustomed to driving these Tekno vehicles with them that it just feels so different when I drive without them. I just don't like it. And that is the VRP 20-hole pistons. I've run them on everything from high bite to low bite and everything in between, and I just thoroughly enjoy how predictable it makes the vehicles feel. You can certainly drive this truck with the kit pistons, but your suspension is going to be a lot more active or reactive, and I typically don't like that. I like my truck to stay calm, planted, and just overall a little bit more predictable. So I went ahead and linked them down below where you guys can get some if you want to try some yourself, but I highly recommend them and I run them in all of my Tekno vehicles. How do I rate this thing as far as the build goes out of the box? I give it a 10 out of 10. I didn't experience any issues at all. Fitment and finish was exactly what you would expect, and I had no issues. So excellent, excellent, excellent. I'm sure as time goes on, I will tinker with a few types of setup changes, but the truck felt very nice out of the box. I did make one change on race day, and I'll talk about it a little bit more in detail when we go over the racing footage. It was the front inner camber link position. I believe out of the box it was all the way down, and I felt like the truck on corner exit just didn't want to let go of the front end, and it kept wanting to steer kind of into the ground. And that might be good on a track that has a little bit lower bite or lots of 180s, or it's a little bit slower. Where I was on the particular day that I was racing, the grip was a little bit higher. It was a hard pack clay dirt that was treated with calcium. So the grip was fairly high when you were in the groove. So I just felt like the truck wanted to steer a little bit too much, so we just raised that inner link up one hole, and the truck felt like the timing of corner exit was a lot better when it came to letting go of the steering. I will say another thing that was kind of interesting about the driving style of the truck is that it's a little bit more active than the buggy, which I was surprised. I think that the rear end is a little bit freer feeling, but I'm going to encourage you, learn to drive it that way. Don't try to take it out of the setup, because whenever I did let the truck do what it wanted to do and I drove it correctly, I could see how fast it was. Versus if I kept the truck very planted and the rear end didn't kind of slide or rotate as much as it wanted to. If I kept that under control too much, where it was too calm, the truck was just slower. And that was my fault. This truck has a little bit different of a driving style than the buggy, I'd say naturally out of the box. But I'm gonna say it's not that hard to learn. You just need some practice and time with it. So my one track day with this truck wasn't enough time to get totally comfortable with it. I think as time goes on and I race it again and again and again, I'll just learn how this truck wants to be driven. talking about the changes of this truck, the revisions from the 2.0. Basically, it's, I think, all, or if not most, of the 2.2 changes that we saw in the buggy now in the truck. So you have all that -2 geometry with the gearboxes, the steering spindles, the rear hubs, all that stuff has the -2 system in it now. I'm not an expert on this truck, so bear with me. The rear universals are new or updated. The arms, I believe all the way around, are updated, new as well. And they have that same hinge bushing system that you see on the buggy is now in the truck as well. The towers have been updated. I don't know what the difference is, if it's just they are now lighter or if the geometry is different or both, but rest assured they are different than what we saw on the previous truck. Again, I'm not an expert when it comes to truggies or nitro truggies in particular, but one thing that I thought was interesting is just the overall track width of the front end of this truck is very, very wide. You can look at it compared to the rear, the front end is just wider. So I think that's what allows it to be driven so aggressively and have possibly a little bit freer of a rear end, because the front end is just so big that it can just hang on and drive out of pretty much any situation you throw at this truck. That's enough yapping about what we have in the truck, how the build went together. Let's go head over to the track review race footage and see what we think over there. Okay, so jumping into this beautiful race day out at the 727 Raceway up in Newport Richey, Florida. This is formerly the Epic RC Complex, formerly the DDHRC, but now it's 727. Joey Perez and the whole crew did a awesome job giving us a super fun, kind of like super crossy, little bit more elevation change than what we're used to seeing in most of our Florida tracks. It's a really fun track. A little bit more on the abrasive side, so lots of grip, tire wear is a little bit higher, and staying in the groove is important. I think that's about everything you need to know about the track. Tire selection, I went out on some TZO 402s. I had tried the 202s, the 402s, much like we discovered in the buggies. They just have more forward drive. So they felt great for today. Slightly on the softer compound, so they kind of burned up a little bit too much by the end of our 20-minute main, but they felt great, had a fun time. Let's jump into it and see what we have. We have Mr. Oliver Manchester, Nolan's dad, doing us a solid and dropping us for the main here, and he's going to be doing us some pitting. So let's jump into it and see what we got.
Hang on a second here. All right, move up, guys, move up. Put it out. Down and quiet. Oh. Just gonna fire back up real quick.
Ooh. It's pretty important to downside all these jumps.
One, just bring it back up to pit lane real quick. I'll have you throw it behind the line when they all come around. Keep the car high.
So I will say that this truck, it was taking me a minute to kind of learn what I needed to do to get it to go fast on corner entry and through the mid corner. I was driving it just a little bit too timid. I was expecting it to do crazy stuff, but it never happened. I was just trying to break kind of habits as this race was going on. This is a section where you'll see it the most. It's a pretty slow double 180 back to back. And it was kind of, I was keeping it neat and tidy, but what I should have done is kind of threw it into the corner a little bit harder, let that rear end kind of hang out a little bit, and let that super wide track width in the front just pull me out of the situation like it did every time. So, you know, not doing anything wrong, but I could go a lot faster in that section. That front double-double is so much fun.
good time in this one. Another 18:30 left in that.
So breaking away here, getting a nice little lead. There wasn't a bunch of guys running the truggy class, so keeping it neat and tidy pretty much meant that I was going to stay out front on this particular day. Like I mentioned in my build breakdown of what I've had in the truck, these VRP pistons, I feel like the landing on this particular jump is a shining example as to what they can let you do. This little double here, pretty high up, I'd say maybe 6 or 7 feet in the air, and then it kind of just falls to a flat landing. So no big deal. But if you have normal pistons with no differential rebound and compression setting like the VRP pistons have, your landing is usually going to be very harsh on a jump like this, and your truck is going to slap the ground and it might bounce. So your landing turns into like a 3-part process rather than what these do. So we'll see here, truck comes down, it's fully compressed now, and it stays and it just goes, versus that little bounce rebound and then settle again and go that you see from traditional pistons. Now, it's a driver preference. These aren't going to feel great for everybody, but I personally like them, and this is one of the reasons why. This is something that I really enjoy about this truck. It's a very similar trait that it shares with its buggy counterparts, but this truck kind of has steering on tap, like always. Anytime you need this thing to steer a lot, it can, but it never seems to do it in an uncontrollable sense. But here's a perfect example. At the top of this 180, this is a interesting section because typically when you reach the top of this hill, the truck kind of reaches this moment of being lifted where there's less grip being driven through the tire. So it's very easy to drift away from the very inside of this corner. So coming up to the top, we did our normal braking procedure. The truck is now coasting, and then I just turn it all the way. And it just hugs real close and goes exactly where I would think it would go. But we've all had that instance where you give it all that steering input and it's just not doing it. Not the case here. Gives me all the steering usually whenever I'm asking for it. So trying to find you guys an instance where we can test the durability of the truck. As we all know, Teknos are pretty durable. But I didn't really have any too big of crashes on this particular day. Some days you do, some days you don't. But here's an instance where you'll see in a second, I drift wide, I clip the pipe. And what you guys, if you don't know, these pipes are held down by really big metal spikes. And sometimes I've seen cars, if they hit them and it doesn't want to move, it'll shear an arm off or a hub or something. So here's a pretty good whack into the outside pipe here in just a second.
Gonna break it.
So you can see I hit one, not the biggest of impacts, but we rolled on with no problems.
Looks like it was just a perfect hit and cut the flywheel. Off on 940 down, 1020 left to go. Barrett, Hill, Iorio, top 3.
If you guys remember when I was doing my breakdowns with the Nitro buggy, I tried to show you some examples where I really felt like the vehicle controlled itself nicely in a potential worst case scenario. I didn't get too out of shape in this corner, but what this truck wants to do is it wants you to rip it full throttle, go as fast as you can, a little bit sooner than you may think. And even if something looks like it's about to go wrong, it's really not. Sometimes in the past, I've had vehicles where if I got on the power and the rear end started to slide out quite a bit, then it would come back the other way. And it just seemed to be this endless wiggle fishtail, through the whole next section of the track. But here you can see the truck. You can see I gave it a handful of throttle. You see the exhaust coming out. And now we're just ripping it through this whole corner. Right there, truck broke free just a little bit, but you can see I'm still in it. Throttle's still being applied, and it just goes on. So this being a higher grip track, I couldn't find too many scenarios where the truck was about to be wildly out of control, but this is the most visual example I can show you of when the truck was starting to lose control. But it really wasn't. It was just a matter of just keep going, trust that it's mechanically going to come back under your feet, and move on.
Oh, I can't see. Oh, there it is. Okay. All right. Oh, if I can bring it in. Jeez.
So we'll watch this pit stop here and comment just a little bit on another lap or two, because spoiler alert, we ended up winning this race by a couple laps, I'm pretty sure. So nice smooth pit stop there from Oliver. We're just doing bottle stops. We're not, trying to set the world on fire, do some fast guy pit stops. Just taking it nice and easy here in our first day out. But the longer I drove the truck, the more I was figuring out how early I could really get on the throttle to get this thing to rotate the way that it wants. I think that as I continue to drive the truck, I may play with some anti-squat and some rear toe settings a little bit and see if anything gets any better. But honestly, if I just commit to putting into some good old-fashioned practice and drive this truck some more, because I don't drive truckies that much, I think that I'm going to be really, really happy with where this truck currently is. I think I'm trying to put in a heater lap here because Nolan jumped on the headset on the other end, and obviously I've lost all driving ability instantly. So we'll go ahead and cut it there because nothing else happens for the rest of this video except me starting to drive worse and worse because Nolan's telling me to do dumb things on the radio. So thanks, Nolan. I appreciate that. So there you go. A pretty uneventful win there on our first day out. I will say that I was quite proud of myself because I think that's the first time that I have put a nitro vehicle together, and on its first race day out, I had zero problems and I got the win. I know it's just a club race, but still, it's the small victories, I think that this truck is just so much fun to drive that it brings me kind of like a new dynamic or a new perspective on race day. When I race two buggies, like an e-buggy and a nitro buggy, I'm having fun, don't get me wrong, but it feels like I'm racing one really fun one, which is the nitro car for me, and then the e-buggy is just like a technicality that I'm racing it, and I'm just kind of getting track time, has a lot of power. I know the lap time should be faster, but it's just not the same level of enjoyment, if that makes any sense. When you get a nitro vehicle that is fast, runs good on the track, dependable, it's just so much more fun to me. The reward of the work and effort of just going to the track in the first place, this is way more rewarding to me than running an e-buggy. So if you have the means and the resources, knowledge, time, whatever, qualifications are appropriate, I think that running a truck is going to be a little bit more fun. My plan as of now for the FRCC series, the Lance's kind of southeast thing that he does down here, I'm gonna run Nitro Buggy and Nitro Truck, because why not? I'm having a lot of fun with Nitro. And we have arguably the best Nitro truck on the market right here, ready to rip. So I might as well race it. Fit, finish, build, 10 out of 10. Performance on the track, 9 out of 10. Could be 10 out of 10 once I figure out what I like with a few small, tiny setup changes. Could I race it exactly how it is and do perfectly fine? Yes. It has that same out-of-the-box reliable speed that we saw with the buggies. It's just Ryan's driving ability might not be on the same page at the moment. But it's not far. It's not far off. A couple more days and me in this truck, we're going to be on the same page. So final thought, would I recommend this to anybody looking to buy a Nitro truck? Absolutely. The same awesome speed and reliability that you see with the Tekno buggies, I can see in this truck as well. Absolutely. So that's going to be it for this one. Thank you again to Tekno. Thank you A-Main, ProTech, TZO. You guys made this happen. And of course, everybody watching this video, if you guys weren't here to watch these in the first place, none of these companies would care about me. So thank you everyone to all your support to make this channel awesome. I'm looking forward to racing this. If you guys have any questions and you're going to build one of these down in the comments below, let me know. Do my best to answer them for you. But that's going to be it for this one. I'll see you next time. Peace. What? Nick is calling me right now. Dude.
What? There he is, bro.
Dude, I'm doing, hang on.
What are you doing?
I'm literally recording the outro to a video right now.
What video?
I'm buttoning up the truck video.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I talked to them this weekend. Said you guys are gonna be almost done, ready to launch.
Yeah.
What's up? Well, fucking send it to my pipeline so we can email blast this.
It doesn't exist yet, bro. I gotta finish the editing. Jeez.
Oh, okay.